Good evening. In tonight's special coverage, we will discuss the situation in Lebanon and Gaza. Despite heavy Israeli bombardment and high-profile losses, Hezbollah persists in its operations. The assassination of Yahya Sinwar complicates regional dynamics as Israeli forces intensify strikes on both fronts. Tensions escalate with Israel's retaliation against perceived Iranian threats, further destabilizing relations with Europe and the US. Stay tuned for more updates.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Well, welcome back. And the Israeli military has stated that its forces attacked Hezbollah headquarters and an underground weapons workshop in Beirut. In response, Hezbollah announced it had launched rocket salvos at Israeli forces in the Sidana area of Sheba farms. At the same time, Israeli media reported that at least 70 rockets fired towards Accra and Nahariya from southern Lebanon. Lebanese media has reported renewed Israeli airstrikes on southern Beirut. The Israeli occupation forces has conducted 4 airstrikes over the past few hours, with 2 targeting the Hadath area and 2 others striking Har Tahrik. Earlier, Israeli forces issued warnings to evacuate buildings in both areas. The Israeli occupation forces have reported that a barrage of 70 projectiles were identified as crossing from Lebanon into northern Israel. They said that most of the projectiles were intercepted by the Israeli air defense system, while some were identified to have fallen in the area. In Beirut, where destruction meets resilience, displaced families endure the harrowing aftermath of airstrikes. Their experiences reveal not only the profound suffering inflicted by the conflict, but also a glimmer of hope as they navigate this tumultuous reality. Special thanks to the crew of Al Qahira News for bringing us this vital report from Lebanon.
رمضان افتح المايك افتح المايك افتح المايك فين الضربة دي افتح المايك غلط عادي يا اخي عادي فين الضربة دي ضربة جدار الصوت ورا بعضه مش
We were here on a press mission that we hadn't yet begun, but we lived through the shock of one of the airstrikes of Beirut with these displaced people, where the cries of children mix with the groans of the elderly. In these cold corners, nothing expresses alienation more than eyes waiting for relief amidst walls filled with the stories of pain.
We are living on edge, constantly anxious. Any moment the strike will come, any moment it will pass. It's incredibly difficult what we're going through.
The repeated airstrikes did not just destroy homes, their flames extended to burn lives. Here, in the temporary shelter, every wall carries a story of suffering, and every face tells a new chapter of sorrow, deepening with each strike.
I'm scared they'll strike the school and I'll die, or my family will die, or something will happen to them, or something will happen to me. This isn't right. My family and I, we all need to stay together.
I mean, while I'm playing, they suddenly strike here. I get scared and run to my mom.
We decided to create a program to reduce this tension and help the children express what's inside them and speak. We focused a lot on drawing, especially for the kids who can't express themselves verbally. They started expressing their pain on paper and they eventually began talking about it.
Children here see the edge of nightmares, and families try to shield themselves with fragile hope for tomorrow. But the sound of planes turned this hope into a distant, almost unattainable dream. What the displaced are experiencing in the shelters has called them great shock. But the bigger shock came from the airstrikes that targeted Beirut, especially the most violent one in the Basta area in central Beirut, to which we will now go. Here, where Beirut once stood as the capital of life, it now appears to be a city sinking in the silence of ruins. Israeli airstrikes have left no stones unturned in many parts of the capital. Every corner here tells a story of pain, grief, and memories that once bore witness to the pulse of life.
It's something that can't be described. You're sitting in safety at home, and suddenly a missile or two hit. No one knows when they will strike. They fell on us and completely destroyed this place.
We are utterly terrified. People are bringing aid and used clothes and placing them in a location, but now we are scared lest the plane sees the aid being dropped and targets it. In our area, no one feels safe anymore.
In the southern suburbs of Beirut, where destruction has become the language of the land, buildings have turned to rubble. The dreams have crumbled under the weight of the strike. The echoes of war still resonate in every alley, and every stone holds a memory of a life that once was. Beirut, a city brimming with resilience. How much you have endured and how much you have bled. Here, among the debris and in the corners of displacement, stories of suffering and pain beat on. But also the voice of hope, the voice of life, remains louder than any shell. This is Lebanon, a homeland resting on the shoulders of love, despite everything, waiting for the sun to rise once again, lighten up a new day. From the surrounding of the southern suburbs, Ramadan al-Mat'ani, Al-Qahira News, the capital of news.
Our special thanks to Al Qahira News correspondent Ramadan al-Mat'ani and the dedicated team of Al Qahira News channel for their exceptional reporting and coverage of these critical events in Lebanon and elsewhere all over in the conflict areas. And providing more analysis on the current updates about the latest developments of the ongoing war, joining us Brigadier General Abdel Mashmoushi, a military and strategic expert from Beirut. Welcome, sir. Hello. Yes, good evening to you, sir. Right. So, given the... Yes, yes. Given the continuous Israeli airstrikes targeting Hezbollah's leadership and military infrastructure, how is the group managing to maintain its operation capabilities and morals, especially in the face of the heavy casualties?
Welcome to you and to your audience. Of course, this battle, in fact, in Lebanon is just one of the series of battles related to an all-out war in the Middle East that happened after October 7th, and it moved to Lebanon. It may move to other countries. In this framework, we can see that this war is a self-determination battle. The civilians, children, and all the citizens may pay the expensive price of these wars. However, I believe that the limited to Hezbollah in front of the Israeli entity. But so from a military perspective, we'll find that there's a great difference in the balance of power for the favor of the Israeli army. However, the resistance in Lebanon prepared for this war, despite of receiving strong strikes, trying to reach a lot of Hezbollah supporters in Beijing operation, Icon operation, then targeting the meetings of the top military leaders and also the middle leaders and lower leaders, in addition to the targeting of the political leaders. All of this causes a kind of loss or makes confusion for the decision makers. It also causes disruption in the communication between the top leadership and the fighters on the ground. However, all of these intelligence and military setbacks that Hezbollah had to face, we will find that in the recent period they restored kind of resilience and the ability for maneuvers. What we can see today, either at the level of the ground front on the borders between Palestine and Lebanon, or at the level of targeting goals inside the Palestinian territories, we'll find there are qualitative operations, and we have to mention Natalia operation and the recent targeting of the residency of the Israeli Prime Minister. All of this indicates that Hezbollah is depending on a different pattern on specifying smart targets, which shows that there's a kind of doubleism or integration between the intelligence work and the military work. Meaning that Natalia operation included collecting information about this meeting and who's going to attend it and the time and the place. Then the targeting happened in the right time, in the right place at the right time, which shows a qualitative progress for Hezbollah's operation. The same applies to the targeting of the Prime Minister residency. This aims to alleviate the spirit of all the resistance, and both operations send a message to Israel that Hezbollah is still able to target inside the Israeli depth, and its target are strategic, which indicates that this operation is not easy and it will be long term. Countries, they depend on the running approach. So they hit, then they run or withdraw. So the resistance are fighting inside their lands, inside their streets, and they are well aware of the geographic nature of their country, and they harness them in the war. As for the ground battle, the enemy tries to make progress in several axes. However, they are limited by the heavy weaponry that they own, including the tanks and armors, which is not suitable for the geology of the land that requires certain type of weapons. But all of this was taken into consideration by the resistance, and they are anti-armors missiles that are carried with arms, which will facilitate maneuvers and hiding behind barriers, either natural barriers or inside houses. All of this serves all of this serves the resistance. But in the framework of the strategic military action, despite of the importance of the achieved results regarding the ground war or land war of Hezbollah, I think the Israeli strategic goals are not limited to entering with a certain depth or certain space inside Lebanon, like 5,000 kilometers or 7,000 kilometers. I think there are an unannounced goal that may require نعم ولكن this assumption.
Yes, General Marmoush, if I may ask you, now here Israeli strikes have targeted Hezbollah's intelligence operations in Beirut. Now, how significant have these attacks been in terms of Hezbollah's strategic capabilities, and how is the group adapting to mitigate the damage and maintain its operational edge?
Thank you for this question. In fact, Israel didn't only target the intelligence structure of Hezbollah, but they also targeted the military and intelligence structures at the same time. They also targeted the weapons warehouses and missile launching platforms. They even targeted the top leaders, military leaders and political leaders. All of this caused a great deal of lack of stability or instability and inability to take political or military decisions. After a certain period of time, maybe a week or two, Hezbollah managed to absorb these shocks, but I think lately Iran started to interfere in the reality from a political perspective, and now they are responsible for taking the political decisions and the management of the battle at the geopolitical level. They have also sent many military leaders and experts who are responsible for the top leadership at the military level and at middle military leadership, because Iran as a state and as a revolution should save their arms, and if they allow the undermining of all of its arms, this will facilitate for Israel and its allies to directly deter the Iranian entity generally. Hence, Iran's conflicts with Lebanon's interest, because Lebanon's interest is a stop of war because of the losses and the damage inside Lebanon. However, the Iranian interest requires keeping these fronts in war, maybe in Lebanon, Gaza, Syria, Sana'a, Yemen, in order to give more space for diplomatic solution.
Yes.
So Iran can stay away from the war arena.
Yes.
ولكن
We are speaking about Lebanon and the situation in Lebanon. Brigadier General Adel Al-Mashmoushi, we thank you so much for your deep analysis, military and strategic expert from Beirut. We thank you so much for joining us today and for your analysis here. And we move on to our next coverage. Palestinian casualties from Israeli airstrikes in Gaza have overwhelmed local hospitals. Israeli airstrikes hit homes and a residential building in Beit Lahia, sending casualties to Kamal Adwan Hospital. Local media reports say that 73 have been killed, with a senior health official confirming the figure. 35 additional deaths have been reported across Gaza, with rescue efforts hindered by a 2-day communications blackout. Two Palestinians have been killed and another was injured in an Israeli airstrike on the northern Palestinian side of Rafah. That came as an Israeli drone hit the Khirbet al-Ats area. Meanwhile, Palestinian media reported that Israeli artillery and gunfire have targeted eastern Absan al-Jadida, east of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Two Palestinians have been killed and others were injured after Israeli airstrikes targeted a home in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Palestinian media outlets have also reported that Israeli forces also demolished residential buildings in the camp. Israeli forces launched 3 airstrikes in northern Gaza, while strikes targeted other areas. Israeli gunboats also shelled homes in the northwest of the Gaza Strip. And for more analysis, we're joined by Ramzi Ouda, Director of the Research Unit at the Palestinian Institute for National Security Studies from Ramallah. Good evening to you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Welcome.
So, how does the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar alter the dynamics in Gaza?
I believe that this question is very difficult because the situation in Gaza is also difficult and complex. It seems today that there is a void in the authority in Gaza Strip. The management of the military operation was the responsibility of the political affairs in the movement. Most of the political and military leaders are either working in the strip or they have died, which puts lots of question marks. How Hamas movement can rearrange its courts again, internal courts, how can they rearrange the house? I believe that there could be pragmatic trends or movements inside Hamas that may reach the decision makers' positions in the movement, and these pragmatic trends may lead at the end of the day to achieving the national reconciliation first, then the negotiations of the hostage exchange may succeed after Sinwar became a martyr, because there are trends in northern Gaza Strip, because resistance and Hamas are talking about the necessity to find a political solution for this crisis, and if the situation remains the same as it's now, because there is a genocide in the Strip, especially northern the Strip, and the whole world is silent and turns blind eye before rescuing the Palestinian people. That's why it's necessary to find solutions that I called in an article that I wrote, saving what can be saved and reaching a deal that may save the dignity of everyone. At least the Palestinians would save their lives and release the hostages in the Israeli prisons.
Yes, that is from the Palestinian point of view, but from the Israeli point of view, does Israel consider killing Sinwar as their final victory against the resistance? Is ending the war more attainable from Israel's point of view in the moment?
No, this does not end the war, because the Israeli aggression is not linked to Sinwar himself or the release of the Israeli hostages. The Israeli plan is very clear since the announcement of the Israeli aggression on October 7th, and they said that their occupation to Gaza Strip will be long-term. They even talked about a period of time that may exceed 10 years. They said there are new security arrangements in the region. The northern Gaza should be separated from the southern Gaza, that displaced people shouldn't return from the south to the north. They spoke about weakening Hamas. Now they say that Hamas is not eliminated, but it's weakened, and its leaders are dead. That was one of the main goals of Netanyahu when he announced the aggression. But with the continuation of the aggression, the real goals appeared, which is occupying Gaza again and preventing the national unity, because the Palestinian national unity will create the independent Palestinian state, which means that there is a colonization plan in the region. Israel today is different from before October 7th. They took the green light from the United States to play the role of US police in the region. There is Israeli invasion in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and maybe in other places, and of course in Iran as well. This all indicate that there are new security arrangements in the region, maybe a new Middle East, and Israel will be the backbone of these arrangements, with main support from the United States of America.
Yes, remains to be seen, and we still are waiting for Mr. Blinken to come, and we'll see what would be the American role, particularly with the Middle East really in a very complicated situation in the moment, and the dire humanitarian crisis. That was Ramzi Aouda, director of the research unit at the Palestinian Institute for National Security Studies from Ramallah. We thank you so much for your analysis here, and that brings us to the end of our coverage bulletin. Remember to join us and be updated by following the Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EGY for the latest developments. Many thanks for watching.